On my baby shower, my ex announced, I object. The words hit me like a slap across the face at what was supposed to be the happiest day I'd had in months. I object. Every conversation in my living room stopped. 23 of my closest friends and family members turned to stare at the doorway where Marcus stood, his dark hair disheveled and that familiar smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. The same smirk that used to make my heart race, now it just made my blood run cold. Marcus, what the hell are you doing here? I struggled to stand from the couch, my 7-month belly making everything awkward. The beautiful pink and gold decorations suddenly felt suffocating. Half-open baby gifts sat abandoned on the coffee table, tiny onesies and blankets that were supposed to represent hope and new beginnings, not this nightmare. Sarah, sweetheart, he said, stepping uninvited into my home like he still belonged here. Like he hadn't destroyed us 4 months ago when I found him in our bed with his coworker Jessica. I think we need to talk about the elephant in the room. My fiancé David immediately moved to my side, his jaw clenched tight. You need to leave. Now. Marcus laughed, that cold sound I remembered too well. Oh, I don't think so, buddy. Not when you're playing house with my baby. The collective gasp from my family was audible. My mother's champagne flute slipped from her fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. My best friend Katie, who had spent 3 weeks planning every detail of this shower, looked like she wanted to murder someone. That's not your baby, David said firmly, but I could hear the slight tremor in his voice. We've been together for 2 months now, an amazing 2 months where I finally understood what it felt like to be cherished instead of manipulated. Oh really? Marcus pulled out his phone with theatrical flair. Because according to my calculations, sweet Sarah here was still warming my bed when this little bundle of joy was conceived. Isn't that right, babe? My face burned with humiliation and rage. Don't you dare call me babe. And don't you dare stand there and lie to my family. Lie? Marcus pressed his hand to his chest in mock offense. Sarah, I have the text messages. The photos. Should I remind everyone here about our little reunion in January? You know, 3 days before you started dating Captain America over there? My Aunt Linda whispered something to my cousin Rebecca. I could see the doubt creeping into people's faces, the mental math they were doing. January to now, it would line up. Marcus knew exactly what he was doing. You're sick, I managed to say, my hands shaking. You cheated on me. You threw away 3 years like it meant nothing. And now you want to waltz in here and destroy the first happiness I've found since? I'm just claiming what's mine, Marcus said, his voice taking on that possessive edge I'd tried so hard to forget. The baby, and maybe even the mother, if she comes to her senses. David stepped forward, and for a moment I thought he might actually hit Marcus. Get out of our house before I call the police. Our house? Marcus tilted his head. Awfully presumptuous for someone who's been around for 5 minutes, don't you think? That's when I realized this wasn't random. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment breakdown. Marcus had planned this, every word, every cruel revelation timed for maximum damage. He wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone I loved. But what he didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment longer than he thought. I reached for my phone with trembling fingers, my heart hammering against my ribs. You want to talk about January, Marcus? Let's talk about January. Sarah, don't, my mother whispered, but I was done being the victim in Marcus's twisted little performance. No, Mom. Everyone here deserves to know the truth. I pulled up my text messages, my voice getting stronger with each word. You want to tell them about January 15th, Marcus? The day you claim we reunited? His smirk faltered for just a second, but he recovered quickly. Go ahead, sweetheart. Tell them how you begged me to come over. How you said you missed what we had. You're right, I did text you that day, I said, scrolling through my phone. But you left out some crucial details. I found what I was looking for and held up my screen. This is the message I sent at 2:17 p.m. Can you please come get your stuff? David's helping me move on Saturday and I don't want your things here anymore. Katie leaned forward from her chair. What did he reply? He said, and I quote, keep it, babe. Consider it a reminder of when you actually mattered to someone. My voice cracked slightly, but I pushed through. The only reason Marcus came over was because I threatened to donate his PlayStation and his vintage comic book collection to Goodwill. That's not, Marcus started, but I wasn't finished. He showed up at 6:30 p.m., drunk, with Jessica's lipstick still on his collar. Do you want to know what his grand romantic gesture was? I looked around the room, making eye contact with my family. He took one look at me, 7 weeks pregnant and crying, and told me I'd gotten fat and desperate since the breakup. My father, who had been silent until now, stood up slowly. Dad was 6'2" and had never liked Marcus even when we were together. You said that to my daughter? Mr. Chen, you don't understand the whole situation, Marcus's voice pitched higher. Oh, but I do understand, I interrupted. Because I recorded it. The room went dead silent. Marcus's face went pale. You recorded me? He sputtered. I recorded everything, I said calmly. See, I'd already suspected you might try something like this eventually. You couldn't handle that I was happy without you. So yes, I hit record the moment you started screaming about how I'd ruined your life and how no one would ever want me. I paused, letting that sink in. Should I play it for everyone? David squeezed my shoulder supportively. Whatever you need to do, babe. Marcus's confident facade was cracking. You can't just record someone without consent. Actually, I can. Colorado is a one-party consent state for recordings. I looked it up. I smiled sweetly. Funny thing about dating a paralegal, you learn things. My cousin Rebecca pulled out her own phone, clearly ready to start recording this train wreck. Marcus noticed and took a step backward toward the door. The real question, I continued, is why you're so desperate to claim a baby that couldn't possibly be yours. What happened, Marcus? Did Jessica finally wise up and leave you too? His jaw twitched. Bingo. This isn't about Jessica. Oh, but it is. I pulled up Instagram on my phone. Because according to her very public post from last week, she's now engaged to your roommate Tyler. Congratulations, by the way. I'm sure finding them together was just as fun for you as finding you two together was for me. Marcus lunged forward, reaching for my phone. Give me that. That's when David stepped between us, and everything went to hell. David's hand shot out and grabbed Marcus's wrist before he could reach my phone. Don't even think about touching her. Get your hands off me. Marcus yanked his arm back, stumbling slightly. His face was flushed red now, all pretense of calm control gone. This is between me and Sarah. No, it's really not, my sister Emma said from across the room. She'd been quiet until now, but I could see the fury building in her eyes. Sarah, show them the hospital records. My stomach dropped. I'd forgotten Emma was there when I got the paternity test done 3 weeks ago. She'd driven me to the appointment because David was out of town for work, and I'd been too anxious to go alone. Marcus's head snapped toward Emma. What hospital records? The ones that prove you're a lying piece of. Emma started. Emma, stop, I said quickly, but the damage was done. I could see Marcus's mind racing, trying to figure out what other evidence I might have. You got a paternity test? My mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Honey, why didn't you tell me? David's face went pale. We hadn't discussed the test. I'd gotten it done during that one weekend when doubt had crept into my mind, not about the baby's paternity, but about whether I'd ever be free from Marcus's manipulation. I'd needed concrete proof for my own peace of mind, something that would shut down any future attempts at this exact scenario. Because I knew this would happen, I said, gesturing at Marcus. I knew he'd eventually try to sabotage my happiness, so I got proof. Scientific, undeniable proof. Marcus laughed, but it sounded forced now. Proof of what? That you'd been lying to poor David here about when you got pregnant? Marcus, my father's voice cut through the room like ice. I'm going to give you exactly 30 seconds to leave my daughter's house before I personally escort you out. Mr. Chen, with all due respect, I have rights here. If that's my baby. It's not your baby. I shouted, my composure finally cracking. God, you're so desperate and pathetic. You can't stand that I'm happy, that someone actually loves me the way you never could. Love? Marcus scoffed. Sarah, he barely knows you. What's it been, 8 weeks? 9? You really think this guy's going to stick around when things get hard? When the baby's crying at 3 a.m. and you look like hell and... David stepped forward again, his fists clenched. That's enough. David, don't, I said, grabbing his arm. He's not worth it. But Marcus wasn't done. He turned to address the room like he was giving some kind of speech. Look, I'm not the bad guy here. Yes, Sarah and I had problems. Yes, I made mistakes. But that doesn't change the biological reality of the situation. Katie stood up from her chair, her face twisted with disgust. Even if the baby was yours, which it's not, what kind of psychopath crashes a baby shower? Who does that? Someone who's tired of being lied about, Marcus shot back. You all think you know what happened between us, but Sarah's not exactly innocent here. She's been playing victim for months. Playing victim? My voice rose to a pitch I didn't recognize. You cheated on me in our bed. I had to get tested for STDs because of you. I found her earrings in our bathroom. That was a mistake. No, Marcus. The mistake was wasting 3 years of my life on someone who was never going to love me properly. I looked around the room at all the shocked faces of my family and friends. You want to know why I got the paternity test? Because I knew this day would come. I knew that eventually, your ego couldn't handle seeing me actually happy. I pulled up my email app with shaking fingers. Dr. Martinez sent me the results last Tuesday. The room held its collective breath. Marcus's face had gone from red to pale, and I could see sweat beading on his forehead. The results confirm what I already knew, I said, my voice steady now. This baby's father is standing right next to me, and it's not the pathetic man who's about to be escorted out by security. Marcus's eyes widened. Security? What security? That's when we heard the knock at the front door. That would be Officer Martinez, Emma said casually, walking toward the front door. I called him about 10 minutes ago when Marcus started making threats. My jaw dropped. Emma, when did you? When you lunged for your phone, she said over her shoulder. I texted Miguel from high school. Remember? He's been with Colorado Springs PD for 2 years now. Marcus spun around wildly, looking for an escape route. This is insane. You can't call the cops on me for visiting my ex-girlfriend. Actually, they can, David said, his voice deadly calm. This is private property, you weren't invited, and you've been verbally threatening Sarah for the past 15 minutes. Officer Martinez appeared in the doorway behind Emma, a tall, broad-shouldered guy I vaguely remembered from Emma's graduation party. He took in the scene with practiced eyes, the scattered baby gifts, my tear-stained face, Marcus backing toward the kitchen like a cornered animal. Evening, folks. We got a call about a domestic disturbance? There's no disturbance, Marcus said quickly, straightening his shirt. This is just a misunderstanding between... Sir, I'm going to need you to step outside with me, Officer Martinez interrupted. His hand rested casually on his belt, and Marcus's bravado evaporated instantly. Wait, no, you don't understand. I'm the father of her baby. Marcus, stop. I couldn't take it anymore. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone, but I managed to pull up the email from Dr. Martinez. You want to keep lying? Fine. Let's settle this right now. I cleared my throat and read aloud, Dear Ms. Chen, the paternity test results for baby Chen are as follows. Marcus Rivera is excluded as the biological father. The probability of paternity is 0%. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Officer Martinez raised his eyebrows. 0%, Marcus, I repeated, my voice getting stronger. As in, there is literally no chance this baby is yours. As in, you just humiliated yourself in front of my entire family for absolutely nothing. Marcus's face went through about 5 different expressions in 3 seconds. That's impossible. The timing. The timing of what? I stood up slowly, David helping me to my feet. The timing of when I was pregnant and happy and you decided you couldn't stand it? My mother finally found her voice. Marcus, dear, I think you should go now. Mrs. Chen, if I could just explain. No. My father stepped forward, and Officer Martinez moved slightly closer to Marcus. You've explained enough. You've humiliated my daughter on what should have been a beautiful day. You've disrupted her baby shower with lies and manipulation. Marcus looked around the room desperately, seeing only hostile faces. Katie was filming everything on her phone now, not even trying to be subtle about it. My cousin Rebecca had her phone out too. In about 10 minutes, this was going to be all over social media. This isn't over, Marcus said, his voice low and bitter. Actually, it is, I replied. I held up my phone again, showing a new screen. Because after you left my apartment in January, I also filed a police report about your harassment. And I got a restraining order approved last week. Officer Martinez's hand moved closer to his handcuffs. Sir, is this true? Do you have an active restraining order? Marcus's face went white. She never served me with papers. Actually, I did. I pulled up another email. The papers were delivered to your work address on Thursday. Your supervisor Jessica Flores signed for them at 11:47 a.m. The look of absolute horror that crossed Marcus's face was almost worth the months of anxiety he'd put me through. Almost. You had them delivered to Jessica? He whispered. Well, according to your LinkedIn, she's your emergency contact now. I figured she should know what kind of man she's dealing with. I smiled sweetly. Congratulations on the promotion to assistant manager, by the way. I'm sure she's really impressed with this little performance. Marcus stumbled backward like I'd physically struck him. You didn't. Jessica doesn't know about. About what? The restraining order? Or about how you've been texting me from different phone numbers for the past month? I pulled up my screenshots folder, my heart pounding with a mixture of terror and vindication. Should we discuss the messages you sent at 2:43 a.m. last Thursday? The ones where you called me a pathetic whale and said David was only with me out of pity? Officer Martinez stepped forward, his expression hardening. Sir, I'm going to need you to come with me right now. Wait. Marcus held up his hands, panic creeping into his voice. Sarah, please, you don't understand what you're doing to me. Jessica and I just got approved for a mortgage. If this gets back to her company? Oh, it already has, Katie said cheerfully from her spot by the window. She held up her phone. I just tagged Jessica in a Facebook post with the video I've been taking. Amazing what you can find when someone has their workplace listed publicly. The color drained from Marcus's face completely. You posted this online? Katie, you didn't, I said, though part of me was secretly thrilled. I absolutely did. Marcus Rivera crashes baby shower, lies about paternity, violates restraining order. It's already got 12 comments. Katie's smile was pure evil. Oh, and Jessica just responded. She says, and I quote, "Who is this psycho and why is he using my name?" Marcus lunged toward Katie, but Officer Martinez caught his arm. That's enough. Sir, you're under arrest for violating a restraining order. No. Marcus struggled against the officer's grip. Sarah, please, you have to delete that post. My job, my apartment, everything's in both our names. Should have thought about that before you decided to play games with my life, I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. Officer Martinez, there's more. I pulled up another folder on my phone, one I'd hoped I'd never have to use. Marcus has been monitoring my bank account. I have screenshots of unauthorized logins to my Wells Fargo account from his IP address. Dates and times going back to February 8th. David's head snapped toward me. What? Sarah, why didn't you tell me? Because I was handling it. My hands were shaking again. I changed all my passwords and alerted the bank's fraud department. They've been tracking his attempts to access my accounts. Officer Martinez pulled out his handcuffs. Sir, you have the right to remain silent. This is insane. Marcus shouted as the cuffs clicked into place. Sarah, tell them this is all a misunderstanding. We used to share accounts. I was just checking to see if you were okay financially. We broke up 4 months ago, Marcus. We closed our joint account in December. I looked at my family, all staring at this train wreck in horrified fascination. He's been trying to figure out where I work, how much money David makes, everything. My mother gasped. Honey, has he been stalking you this whole time? Not stalking exactly, but... I pulled up my call log. 47 blocked phone calls in the past 2 weeks. Always between midnight and 3 a.m. The phone company traced them back to his number. Emma walked back over from the front door, her face grim. Sarah, there's something else. Miguel says they've had 3 other reports about Marcus in the past month. Apparently, he showed up at David's work last Tuesday asking questions about you. David went rigid beside me. What kind of questions? According to the security guard at your office building, he claimed to be your brother-in-law and said there was a family emergency. He wanted to know your schedule, what time you usually leave for lunch, stuff like that. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. My Aunt Linda clutched her pearls dramatically. This is like something out of a Lifetime movie. Officer Martinez guided Marcus toward the door, but Marcus kept twisting around to look back at me. Sarah, please. I love you. I made mistakes, but I can change. Don't let them destroy my life over this. Love? I stood up, my voice rising. Marcus, you told me 3 days ago in a voicemail that I was a desperate loser who trapped some random guy with another man's baby. Does that sound like love to you? You kept the voicemail? David asked quietly. I kept everything. I looked around the room at my family and friends, all these people who loved me enough to show up for a baby shower and were now witnessing the complete implosion of my past. Every text, every call, every email. I documented everything because I knew this day was coming. Marcus was almost to the front door now, but he managed one last desperate shout. The baby could still be mine. Those tests aren't always accurate. That's when my grandmother, who had been silent through this entire nightmare, finally spoke up from her chair in the corner. Young man, she said in her crisp, no-nonsense voice, that baby was conceived in late November. I know this because my granddaughter called me crying on Thanksgiving, telling me you'd been cheating for 2 months and she was leaving you. The final piece of Marcus's delusion crumbled. Even he couldn't argue with Grandma Chen. Officer Martinez paused at the doorway, Marcus still struggling weakly in his grip. Ma'am, did you say there were more incidents we should know about? I nodded, my phone trembling in my hands. There's something else. Marcus, do you want to tell them about the Instagram account, or should I? His face went ashen. What Instagram account? The fake one you created 3 weeks ago. Colorado_springs_truth_teller. Ring any bell? I pulled up the screenshots I'd been saving. You've been posting photos of me and David from our dates, calling me a cheating whore and him a homewrecker. David's jaw dropped. Those posts. I saw those. I thought it was just some random troll. Not random at all. I scrolled through the evidence. Marcus used the same email format he always uses, his initials plus his birth year. The account was created on February 14th, Valentine's Day, right after David posted that photo of us at dinner. Katie leaned over to look at my phone. Holy shit, Sarah. He posted your work address. And David's license plate number. Language, Katie, my mother said automatically, then caught herself. Actually, given the circumstances. Officer Martinez stepped back into the room. Ma'am, I'm going to need copies of all of this for evidence. This goes way beyond a simple restraining order violation. There's more, Emma said grimly. She'd been texting furiously for the past few minutes. Miguel just ran Marcus's name through the system. Apparently, he was fired from his job at Patterson Logistics last Friday for erratic behavior and misuse of company resources. Marcus's head snapped up. That's confidential information. They can't just. Actually, they can, Officer Martinez said. It's public record once charges are filed. Speaking of which. He looked at me seriously. Ms. Chen, we're looking at potential charges for cyberstalking, harassment, bank fraud, and identity theft. Are you prepared to press full charges? The room went dead silent. This was it, the moment where I could either let Marcus continue to terrorize me from the shadows, or end this once and for all. Yes, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I want to press full charges. Marcus's composure finally shattered completely. Sarah, no. Please. You don't understand, Jessica already kicked me out after she saw the Facebook post. I'm staying in my car. If I get arrested, I'll lose everything. You lost everything the day you decided to cheat, my father said coldly. You just didn't realize it yet. Mr. Chen, please, I'm begging you. Don't beg my father, I interrupted. Don't beg anyone in this room. We're not the ones who made these choices. My phone buzzed with a text notification. I glanced down and felt my blood run cold. Officer Martinez, I said quietly, we have a problem. He looked up from his notepad. What kind of problem? I held up my phone with shaking hands. I just got a text from an unknown number. It says, if you have me arrested, everyone will know what really happened in November. Ask David about the paternity test timing. David went pale beside me. Sarah, what does that mean? Marcus's eyes lit up with desperate hope. Tell them, Sarah. Tell them about the test you took in December. Before you even met David. The room started spinning. I gripped the back of the couch, my 7-month belly suddenly feeling impossibly heavy. What is he talking about? My mother asked, her voice barely a whisper. I closed my eyes, knowing that my carefully constructed defense was about to crumble. Because Marcus was right about one thing, I had taken a paternity test in December. Just not the kind anyone was expecting. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, waiting for an explanation that I wasn't sure I was ready to give. Sarah? David's voice was barely above a whisper. What December test? I took a shaky breath, my hands instinctively moving to my belly. It's not what you think. It's not what Marcus is trying to make it sound like. Then explain it, my mother said, her voice tight with worry. Marcus was practically vibrating with vindictive energy, even with his hands cuffed behind his back. Go ahead, Sarah. Tell them about Dr. Peterson's office on December 18th. Tell them what you were really there for. Officer Martinez stepped forward. Ma'am, if there's something relevant to this case. I went to get genetic testing, I said quickly, the words tumbling out before I lost my nerve. But not paternity testing. Genetic counseling. For the baby's health. David's brow furrowed. What kind of genetic testing? My family has a history of cystic fibrosis, I said, looking at my mother, who nodded slowly in understanding. My cousin Jennifer's daughter has it. When I found out I was pregnant, I wanted to know if there was a risk. Emma suddenly straightened in her chair. Wait, that's what you were crying about that day. You weren't crying because of Marcus. Partly because of Marcus, I admitted. But mostly because I was terrified. The genetic counselor said that if the father was also a carrier, there would be a 25% chance the baby could have CF. Marcus's smug expression started to falter. That's not, you never mentioned. Because we were broken up, Marcus. Why would I discuss my baby's health with someone who called me a mistake and told me to figure it out alone? I pulled up my phone again, scrolling to my medical records app. I have the paperwork right here. Genetic screening performed December 18th at Presbyterian St. Joseph. Officer Martinez looked confused. I don't understand what this has to do with paternity. It doesn't, David said, relief flooding his voice. Sarah, you were getting tested to see if you carried the CF gene. Exactly. And I needed to know about the father's genetic history too. I looked directly at Marcus. Which is why I called you that day in December. Not because I wanted you back, not because I was confused about the baby's paternity, but because I needed to know if anyone in your family had cystic fibrosis. Marcus's face went from smug to confused to horrified. You called me about medical history? I left you 3 voicemails asking if anyone in your family had breathing problems or digestive issues. You never called me back. I turned to Officer Martinez. I have those voicemails saved too. December 18th, 19th, and 20th. All asking about family medical history. Katie pulled out her phone. Marcus, you absolute moron. She was trying to protect her baby's health, and you thought she was pining after you? But the timing, Marcus started desperately. The timing of what? My grandmother interrupted sharply. The timing of when a responsible mother makes sure her child will be healthy? Emma was scrolling through her own phone now. Sarah, didn't you say the CF test came back negative for both you and the baby? Clear on all counts, I confirmed. Which I found out on January 3rd. 3 days before I met David at Katie's New Year's party. David squeezed my hand. Why didn't you tell me about this before? Because it was resolved. The baby's healthy, I'm healthy, and I didn't want to worry you over something that turned out to be nothing. I looked around the room apologetically. I didn't want anyone to worry. Marcus was shaking his head frantically. No, this doesn't add up. Sarah, you were emotional that day. You said you needed me. I said I needed medical information from you, I corrected. There's a difference. A huge difference. Officer Martinez checked his watch. Sir, regardless of any confusion about medical testing, you're still under arrest for violating a restraining order, harassment, and unlawful computer access. We need to go. Wait. Marcus twisted in his grip, his voice rising to a near shriek. Sarah, check your bank account. Right now. My blood ran cold. What did you do, Marcus? I didn't do anything. But you should check it anyway. Check the deposit from Friday. David and I exchanged glances. Sarah, don't, he said quietly. Whatever game he's playing. No, check it, Marcus insisted, sweat beading on his forehead. Trust me, you want to know about this. Against my better judgment, I opened my banking app with trembling fingers. There, clear as day, was a deposit from Friday afternoon that made my knees buckle. What is it? Emma asked, moving closer. I stared at the screen, not believing what I was seeing. There's a deposit for $8,000 from Patterson Logistics. The room went silent again. Marcus, Officer Martinez said slowly, didn't you say you were fired from Patterson Logistics? Marcus's face had gone completely white. I can explain that. Explain it fast, Officer Martinez said, his grip tightening on Marcus's arm. Because unauthorized access to someone's bank account is a felony. Marcus was breathing hard now, panic clear in his eyes. It's not what it looks like. Sarah, you have to listen to me. $8,000, Marcus. I stared at my phone screen, the numbers blurring as my hands shook. From your former employer. How does that even happen? David moved closer, peering at my phone. Sarah, what's the transaction description say? I squinted at the small text. Settlement payment, confidential agreement, reference number PT 2847. My voice trailed off as the implications hit me. Marcus, what did you do? I didn't steal anything, he said desperately. It's legitimate. Check with Patterson Logistics, they'll confirm it. Katie crossed her arms. If it's legitimate, why do you look like you're about to throw up? Because. Marcus swallowed hard, looking around the room at all the hostile faces. Because I may have told them that Sarah was my pregnant fiancée who needed financial support after I was wrongfully terminated. The collective gasp from my family was audible. My father stepped forward, his face darker than I'd ever seen it. You told them what? Dad's voice was deadly quiet. I was desperate. Jessica kicked me out, I lost my job, I was living in my car. I needed money to get back on my feet. Marcus was talking faster now, the words tumbling over each other. I told HR that I had a pregnant fiancé who was depending on my income, and that firing me would cause undue hardship. Using my name, I said, my voice hollow. You used my actual name. I had to make it believable. Sarah, I was going to pay you back once I found another job. I swear, I was going to. You committed fraud, Officer Martinez interrupted. You defrauded a company out of $8,000 using a false identity. Emma was typing furiously on her phone. Miguel's running the reference number now. Sarah, Patterson Logistics thinks you're Marcus's pregnant fiancée who's due in 6 weeks. My mother sank into the nearest chair. This keeps getting worse. There's more, David said grimly, looking at his own phone. I just googled Patterson Logistics. Sarah, they posted a press release last Thursday about their Compassionate Employee Assistance Program. They specifically mentioned supporting expecting families during difficult transitions. Katie's mouth fell open. Marcus, you absolute psychopath. You turned your ex-girlfriend into a poster child for corporate charity fraud. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Marcus struggled against Officer Martinez's grip. The HR lady, Mrs. Rodriguez, she was so sympathetic when I showed her Sarah's ultrasound photo. You showed them my ultrasound? I felt like I was going to be sick. Marcus, that photo has my name on it. And David's name. And the correct due date. The full scope of Marcus's deception was becoming clear, and it was so much worse than I'd imagined. Officer Martinez pulled out his radio. I need backup at 847 Maple Street, and I need someone to call Patterson Logistics immediately. We have a fraud case involving stolen identity and false documentation. Wait. Marcus was full on panicking now. Sarah, you can keep the money. Think of it as child support. I won't bother you anymore, I promise. Child support for a baby that isn't yours, my grandmother said acidly. Using money you stole by pretending to be engaged to a woman who has a restraining order against you. David was scrolling through something on his phone, his expression getting darker by the second. Sarah, there's more. Patterson Logistics has a whole webpage about their employee assistance fund. They're accepting donations from other companies to help Marcus and Sarah Rivera with medical expenses. My legs gave out completely. David caught me as I sank onto the couch, my head spinning. Rivera? I whispered. He told them my last name was Rivera? According to this, you two have been engaged for 8 months and you're having complications with a pregnancy that require expensive medical care. David's voice was tight with controlled rage. Sarah, there are companies in Colorado Springs that have donated money to support your fake medical bills. The baby shower gifts scattered around my living room suddenly felt surreal, tiny clothes and toys surrounded by the wreckage of Marcus's elaborate con game that had turned me into an unwilling charity case. How many people think I'm engaged to you? I asked Marcus, my voice barely audible. His silence was answer enough. Katie was still scrolling through her phone, her face getting paler by the minute. Sarah, honey, you need to see this. Patterson Logistics isn't the only company involved. My stomach dropped even further, which I hadn't thought was possible. What do you mean? There's a GoFundMe page. Katie's voice was barely a whisper. Marcus Rivera and Sarah Rivera Baby Medical Emergency Fund. It's raised $12,000. The room erupted in shocked voices, but everything sounded muffled and distant. David's arm tightened around me as I stared at Katie's phone screen in horror. $12,000, I repeated numbly. From strangers. Marcus was hyperventilating now, his face bright red. Sarah, I can fix this. I'll take down the page, I'll return the money. How long has this been running? Officer Martinez demanded, reaching for Katie's phone. She scrolled down to the creation date. February 8th. It says here that Sarah is experiencing severe pregnancy complications and may need emergency surgery. Marcus lost his job due to discrimination and they can't afford the medical bills. Emma gasped. February 8th? That's the day after you posted that photo of your ultrasound on Instagram, Sarah. The one where you were excited about finding out the baby's sex. The pieces clicked together in my mind with sickening clarity. You screenshotted my ultrasound photo and used it for fraud, didn't you? Marcus couldn't even look at me anymore. People wanted to help. Help who? My father roared, stepping forward so fast that Officer Martinez had to position himself between them. Help the daughter you've been harassing and stalking? Or help yourself to other people's money? Both. Marcus shouted desperately. Sarah, don't you see? This money could help with the baby's expenses. Even if David is the father, you're still going to need financial support. We don't want your stolen money, David said, his voice cold as ice. We want you out of our lives. Katie was still reading from the GoFundMe page, her voice getting higher with each detail. Oh my god, it gets worse. He's posting updates. February 14th, Sarah had a scare at the hospital but the baby is okay. February 20th, doctor bills are piling up but we're staying positive. She looked up at me with wide eyes. March 3rd, Sarah's boyfriend David has been so supportive during this difficult time. My mouth fell open. He mentioned David by name? Wait, it gets worse, Emma said, looking over Katie's shoulder. March 10th, planning a small baby shower to lift Sarah's spirits. Every dollar helps us prepare for our miracle baby. Officer Martinez keyed his radio again. I need Detective Morrison down here immediately. And get me the fraud unit. You used my baby shower, I said slowly, the full horror of it sinking in. You used my actual baby shower to legitimize your fake fundraiser. Marcus was crying now, ugly desperate sobs. I was going to tell you. I was going to split the money with you. That's why I came today, to explain everything. You came today to claim paternity of a baby that isn't yours, my mother said icily. In front of my entire family. That was just to get your attention. Marcus's voice cracked. I knew you wouldn't listen to me otherwise. I knew if I could just explain about the money. Explain what? I stood up shakily, David's hand steadying me. How you turned my pregnancy into a con game? How you made dozens of strangers think I'm your fiancé? How you've been posting fake medical updates about me for 2 months? Emma was frantically typing on her phone. Sarah, I'm sending Miguel screenshots of everything. This isn't just fraud anymore, he's been using your identity for months. The comments section, Katie said suddenly, her face going white. Oh no, Sarah. People are commenting on the GoFundMe. They're giving you advice about pregnancy. About your relationship with Marcus. There are women sharing their own miscarriage stories to support you. The weight of Marcus's deception crashed over me like a wave. Somewhere in Colorado Springs, there were kind strangers who thought they were helping a struggling pregnant woman. They'd donated their hard-earned money, shared personal stories, offered encouragement, all based on Marcus's lies. How many people? I whispered. Katie scrolled through the donor list. 87 individual donations. Some as small as $5, some as large as $500. Her voice broke slightly. Sarah, there's a donation from Grandma Betty for $25. Her comment says, hang in there sweetie, my granddaughter had complications too but everything turned out fine. I sank back onto the couch, overwhelmed by the scope of what Marcus had done. It wasn't just fraud, it was emotional manipulation of innocent people who were trying to help. Mrs. Patterson from the grocery store donated $50, Emma added quietly, reading over Katie's shoulder. She says I remember when Sarah was so polite helping me with my groceries when I broke my wrist. She deserves all the support we can give. Marcus lifted his head, hope flickering in his eyes. See? People care about you, Sarah. They want to help. They want to help someone who doesn't exist. I shouted, my composure finally snapping completely. They think they're helping Marcus Rivera's pregnant fiancée, not David's girlfriend who has a restraining order against her stalker ex. Officer Martinez's radio crackled with response, and I caught fragments. Detective en route, fraud unit notified, potential federal charges. Federal charges. The words hit me like a physical blow. Marcus, I said quietly, what have you done to us? The implications of federal charges hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Officer Martinez stepped away to speak into his radio, his voice low and urgent, while Marcus continued his pathetic sniveling. Sarah, please, he begged, I never meant for it to get this complicated. It started small, just the Patterson logistics thing, but then Mrs. Rodriguez was so sympathetic, and she mentioned how other companies have assistance programs. So you decided to become a professional charity fraud? David's voice was ice cold. Using my girlfriend's identity? Emma looked up from her phone, her face grim. It gets worse. Miguel just ran the GoFundMe account details. Marcus linked it to a bank account that he opened using both of your names. The account is registered as Marcus and Sarah Rivera Joint Medical Fund at Colorado Community Credit Union. My stomach lurched. He opened a bank account in my name? With a fake marriage certificate, Officer Martinez said, returning from his radio conversation. We just confirmed it with the credit union's fraud department. Mr. Rivera presented what appeared to be a valid marriage license dated November 15th. November 15th. 3 days before I'd actually found him cheating. You forged a marriage certificate? My voice came out as a whisper. Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. I found a template online. I thought if we were technically married on paper, even just for the bank account, it would make everything legal retroactively if we got back together. Katie started laughing, a high, slightly hysterical sound. Marcus, that's not how marriage works. That's not how anything works. The credit union has frozen the account and flagged it for federal investigation, Officer Martinez continued. Ms. Chen, you're going to need to file an identity theft report with the Federal Trade Commission. This crosses state lines now. Some of the GoFundMe donations came from Wyoming and New Mexico. My head was spinning. How is this possible? Don't banks verify identity? He had copies of your driver's license and social security card, Emma said quietly, still reading from her phone conversation with Miguel. From when you two lived together. And he knew your mother's maiden name, your first pet's name, all the standard security questions. The security questions. Of course. 3 years of relationship meant Marcus knew every detail of my personal history that banks used for verification. Sarah, my mother said carefully, have you checked your credit report recently? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Oh God. Marcus, what else did you open in my name? His silence was damning. David was already pulling up a credit monitoring app on his phone. What's your social security number? We're checking this right now. David, I don't think, I started. Sarah, give me your social, he said firmly. We need to know how deep this goes. With shaking hands, I recited the numbers. David typed rapidly, then went completely still as the results loaded. How bad? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. There's a credit card opened at First National Bank on January 22nd. Limit of $8,000. His voice was deadly calm. Current balance, $7,432. The room started spinning again. What did you buy, Marcus? Nothing for me, he said desperately. It was all for the baby. I bought a crib, a car seat, clothes, everything's in storage unit 247 at Secure Storage on Austin Boulevard. Sarah, I was going to surprise you. Katie's mouth fell open. You spent $7,000 on baby stuff for a baby that isn't yours, using a credit card you opened illegally in your ex-girlfriend's name? He was building a nursery, Emma said slowly, the horror dawning on her face. Marcus, you rented a storage unit and filled it with baby furniture for Sarah's baby. Officer Martinez keyed his radio again. I need units at Secure Storage, 1847, Austin Boulevard, Unit 247. Possible evidence in an identity theft case. There's more, David said, his face pale as he continued scrolling. A loan application at Rocky Mountain Credit Union. Denied, thank God, but he applied for $15,000 for home improvements to accommodate new baby. Marcus was hyperventilating now. The apartment I was looking at had 2 bedrooms. I thought if I could get everything ready, show you that I could provide for the baby. Provide with stolen money and fraudulent credit, my father exploded. Marcus, you've destroyed this girl's credit. Her financial future. The front door opened and Detective Morrison walked in, a stern-looking woman in her 40s who took one look at the scene and immediately started taking notes. Officer Martinez filled me in on the basics, she said briskly. Ms. Chen, I need you to understand that you're the victim of a sophisticated identity theft scheme. We're looking at multiple felonies here. Marcus lifted his tear-stained face. Detective, please, I was going to make it right. Everything I did was out of love. Love doesn't forge marriage certificates, Detective Morrison cut him off. Love doesn't steal someone's identity to fund a fantasy relationship. She turned to me. Ms. Chen, we're going to need you to come to the station tomorrow to give a full statement. Bring every piece of documentation you have. My phone buzzed with a new notification. Another text from an unknown number. Check the wedding planning website. My blood ran cold. Marcus, what wedding planning website? His face crumpled completely. The Knot.com, I created a wedding website for us. For after the baby was born, when you realized we belonged together. David grabbed my phone and typed rapidly. Within seconds, his face went white. Sarah, he's been planning your wedding. Our wedding. It's scheduled for June 15th at Garden of the Gods. Detective Morrison looked up sharply. He booked a wedding venue? With a $3,000 deposit, David said, his voice hollow. Paid for with Sarah's fraudulent credit card. The room fell completely silent except for the sound of Marcus's sobbing and the detective's pen scratching across her notepad. I stared at the scattered baby gifts around my living room, innocent tokens of love and support from family and friends, now contaminated by the knowledge that my ex-boyfriend had been living in an elaborate fantasy where I was his wife, carrying his child, planning our future together. How long? I whispered. Marcus, how long have you been planning this? He looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Since the day you left me, Sarah. Since the very first day. Detective Morrison's pen stopped moving. The silence stretched until it felt suffocating. Since the day I left, I repeated slowly. Marcus, that was 4 months ago. I know exactly how long it's been, he said, his voice barely a whisper. 123 days. I've been counting. Emma made a small, horrified sound. You've been planning this for 123 days? Detective Morrison stepped closer to Marcus, her expression grim. Mr. Rivera, I need you to tell me about any other accounts, websites, or legal documents you created using Ms. Chen's identity. Marcus's silence was more terrifying than his confession. Marcus, I said, my voice shaking, what else? There might be a few more things. David's knuckles were white as he gripped his phone. Define a few more things. I may have updated your emergency contact information at Presbyterian Hospital to list me as your spouse. My mother gasped audibly. Marcus, that's her medical information. And I might have called your HR department at Morrison Marketing to add me to your health insurance as your domestic partner. The words hit me like physical blows. You did what? Detective Morrison was writing furiously now. Mr. Rivera, are you telling me you've been accessing private medical information and employee benefits? It was just in case something happened with the pregnancy. Marcus said desperately. Sarah, what if you had an emergency and they couldn't reach David? What if you needed someone who knew your medical history? You're not my medical proxy. I shouted, struggling to stand again. David is. I signed the paperwork in February. Actually, Marcus said quietly, I think you'll find that the hospital has me listed as your primary contact as of March 1st. Officer Martinez stepped forward. How did you manage that? I called and said there had been a family emergency, that Sarah was unconscious and I needed to update her contact information as her husband. They were very helpful. The room erupted in angry voices, but all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. Marcus hadn't just been stealing money, he'd been systematically inserting himself into every aspect of my life, creating a paper trail that made him my legal next of kin. What about work? I asked, dreading the answer. Marcus looked at the floor. I may have called Morrison Marketing to let them know about our upcoming wedding. You know, so they could plan coverage for your maternity leave. Katie's voice was shrill with disbelief. He called Sarah's job pretending to be her fiancé? Your supervisor, Mrs. Patterson, was so excited, Marcus continued. She said the whole office had been wondering when you'd announce the engagement. She's planning a surprise office shower for next Friday. My legs gave out completely. David caught me as the full scope of Marcus's deception crashed over me. My coworkers thought I was engaged to Marcus. My hospital thought he was my emergency contact. My insurance company thought he was my domestic partner. Marcus, Detective Morrison said slowly, how many institutions have you contacted claiming to be Ms. Chen's spouse or fiancé? I kept a list, he admitted. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything important. A list? It's in my car. In a notebook. I wrote down everywhere I called and what information I updated. Officer Martinez immediately headed for the front door. I'll secure the vehicle. How many places? I whispered. Marcus finally met my eyes, and what I saw there was pure, unhinged obsession. 47. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. 47 institutions, banks, medical facilities, government offices, employers, all believing that Marcus Rivera was my husband, my partner, my chosen family. 47, Detective Morrison repeated. Mr. Rivera, you've just confessed to 47 counts of identity fraud. But I love her, Marcus said, as if that explained everything. I love her, and love means taking care of someone. Protecting them. Making sure they're safe. Love means respecting someone's choices, my grandmother said sharply from her corner chair. This isn't love, young man. This is possession. Marcus turned to her desperately. Mrs. Chen, you know how good Sarah and I were together. 3 years. We had 3 beautiful years before that mistake with Jessica. Before you chose to cheat, Grandma corrected. Before you chose to betray my granddaughter's trust. David's phone buzzed with a notification. He glanced at it and went completely pale. Sarah, he said quietly, we have another problem. I couldn't imagine what could possibly make this worse. What now? I just got an email from my insurance company. Apparently, they received notification that I'm no longer your domestic partner because you got married in November. The implications hit me immediately. My health insurance. Marcus, what did you do to my health insurance? I transferred it, he said in a small voice. To my policy at Patterson Logistics. As my spouse. Sarah, your deductible went down by $800. I was trying to save you money. Detective Morrison looked up from her notes with something approaching awe. Mr. Rivera, you've committed insurance fraud on multiple levels. State and federal. But the savings. Marcus. I screamed, my control finally snapping completely. I'm 7 months pregnant. Do you understand what happens if my insurance gets canceled because of your fraud? Do you know what medical bills cost without coverage? The weight of what he'd done was crushing. Every system designed to protect me, my job, my insurance, my medical care, my financial security, had been compromised by his obsession. And somewhere in Colorado Springs, 47 institutions believed Marcus Rivera was the most important person in my life. Officer Martinez returned from Marcus's car carrying a small black notebook, his expression grim. Detective Morrison, you need to see this. He handed her the notebook, and she flipped it open, her eyebrows rising with each page. Mr. Rivera, this is incredibly detailed. You have dates, times, confirmation numbers. I'm very organized, Marcus said weakly, as if that somehow made it better. Detective Morrison read from the notebook. March 2nd, called Colorado Springs Utilities, updated account holder information to joint account for Marcus and Sarah Rivera. Confirmation number 4-7-7-9B. She looked up at me. Ms. Chen, did you authorize any changes to your utility accounts? My mouth felt like cotton. No. Marcus, you changed my electricity bill? And gas, water, and cable, he admitted. Sarah, do you know how much money you can save with a joint account? Plus, I set up automatic payments from our shared checking account. What shared checking account? David interrupted. Marcus pulled at his handcuffs. The one at Colorado Community Credit Union. The medical fund account. I've been using it to pay all of Sarah's monthly bills since February. The room started spinning again. You've been paying my rent? And your car payment? And your student loans? Sarah, you were so stressed about money when you were pregnant. I was just trying to help. Detective Morrison continued reading. March 5th, called Colorado Department of Revenue, updated address for Sarah Chen's tax refund to 847 Maple Street, she stopped. Mr. Rivera, that's this address. But according to my notes, you don't live here. I put Sarah's address, Marcus said. So the refund check would go somewhere safe. Emma grabbed my arm. Sarah, didn't you say you were expecting a tax refund of like $2,000? My stomach dropped. Marcus, where's my tax refund? His silence was damning. The storage unit, Officer Martinez said suddenly. Unit 247. That's where he's been having everything delivered. Detective Morrison keyed her radio. Units at secure storage, I need you to check for any mail or packages addressed to Sarah Chen or Sarah Rivera. There might be some mail there, Marcus mumbled. Some mail? Katie's voice pitched higher. Marcus, have you been stealing Sarah's mail? Not stealing. Redirecting. I filed a change of address form with the Postal Service. Temporary, just until we figured things out. David's face was murderous. You've been intercepting her mail for 2 months? Important mail, Marcus clarified. Bank statements, medical bills, government correspondence. Sarah, some of those medical bills were getting expensive. I've been paying them from the GoFundMe money. You've been paying my medical bills with money you stole through fraud, I said slowly, trying to process the insanity. Marcus, those bills have my social security number on them. My insurance information. Detective Morrison's radio crackled. Detective Morrison, we're at the storage unit. You need to see this. What have you found? Boxes of mail addressed to Sarah Chin. Looks like months' worth. And? The voice paused. Ma'am, there's a complete nursery set up in here. Crib, changing table, rocking chair. It looks like someone was planning to live here. Marcus started crying again. It was supposed to be temporary. Just until I could find us a proper 2-bedroom apartment. Sarah, I had everything ready for when the baby came. My grandmother's voice cut through his sobs like a knife. Marcus, dear, where exactly did you think Sarah was going to live after the baby was born? With me, he said simply. Once she realized how much I'd done for her, how much I'd sacrificed, she'd understand that we were meant to be together. The complete delusion in his voice made my skin crawl. In Marcus's mind, identity theft and fraud weren't crimes, they were grand romantic gestures that would win me back. Detective Morrison closed the notebook with a sharp snap. Mr. Rivera, you've just confessed to mail fraud, which is a federal offense. Combined with the identity theft, insurance fraud, and unauthorized access to government systems, you're looking at potentially decades in federal prison. Marcus's face crumpled. But I love her. Everything I did was because I love her. Mr. Rivera, my father said, his voice deadly calm, if you loved my daughter, you would have respected her decision to leave you. You would have let her be happy. She can be happy with me. Marcus insisted. David doesn't know her like I do. He doesn't know that she's lactose intolerant but still eats ice cream when she's stressed, or that she has nightmares about her college roommate's car accident, or that she... Stop, I whispered, but he continued. He doesn't know that you used to wake up at 3 a.m. and check that the door was locked twice because of that break-in at your sister's house. He doesn't know you keep your grandmother's ring in a jewelry box that plays for Elise because it reminds you of piano lessons. Stop. I screamed, covering my ears. Marcus, just stop. But the damage was done. Every intimate detail of my life that I'd shared with him during 3 years together had become ammunition in his obsession. He'd weaponized my vulnerabilities, my fears, my most private moments. And now 47 institutions had pieces of that information, believing Marcus Rivera had the right to access my most personal details. Detective Morrison's radio crackled again, and this time the officer's voice was tense. Detective, we found something else in the storage unit. There's a section set up like a surveillance center. Multiple phones, a laptop, and what appears to be recording equipment. My blood turned to ice. Recording equipment? Marcus wouldn't look at me. I just wanted to make sure you were safe. What kind of recording equipment? Detective Morrison demanded. The voice on the radio continued. Looks like audio surveillance gear. And there are printed photographs. Lots of them. David's grip on my shoulder tightened. Photographs of what? Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. I may have been documenting Sarah's daily routine. For safety purposes. You were stalking me, I said, the words coming out flat and emotionless. You were actually stalking me. Not stalking. Protecting. Sarah, do you know how dangerous it is for pregnant women living alone? The statistics on home invasions, car accidents, medical emergencies. How long? Detective Morrison interrupted. How long have you been surveilling Miss Chin? Marcus fidgeted with his handcuffs. Since mid-January. But it was just basic stuff. When she left for work, when she came home, who she spent time with. You've been watching me for 2 months? My voice cracked. Marcus, how is that even possible? I installed a tracking app on your phone back in December, before you changed all your passwords. And I may have borrowed your spare apartment key before you asked for it back. The room exploded in angry voices, but I felt strangely detached, like I was watching this happen to someone else. The man I'd lived with for 3 years, the man I'd trusted with my spare key and my phone passcode, had turned those small intimacies into tools of surveillance. Mr. Rivera, Officer Martinez said, are you telling us you've had unauthorized access to Ms. Chen's apartment? I never went inside. Marcus said quickly. Well, except for that one time in February when I thought I heard the smoke detector beeping. I was worried about carbon monoxide poisoning. Pregnant women are especially vulnerable. You were in my apartment? I stood up so fast that David had to steady me. When? When were you in my apartment? February 23rd. You were at work, and I heard the beeping from outside, so I used the key to check. But Sarah, the smoke detector battery was actually dying. I replaced it with a new one. I probably saved your life. Katie was scrolling through her phone frantically. Sarah, February 23rd, wasn't that the day you came home and said something felt off about your apartment? My memory snapped into focus with horrible clarity. The coffee mug. I came home and there was a coffee mug in my sink that I didn't remember using. I turned to stare at Marcus in horror. You made yourself coffee in my kitchen. I was there for 20 minutes replacing the battery. I got thirsty. What else did you do during those 20 minutes? Detective Morrison asked. Marcus's silence stretched too long. Marcus, what else? I may have updated some of your mail forwarding preferences on your computer. And I left a prenatal vitamin on your counter because I noticed you were running low. David's face was white with rage. You went through her medical supplies? I was being thoughtful. Sarah, you missed taking your vitamin for 3 days in a row according to your pill organizer. Do you know what folic acid deficiency can do to a developing baby? The casual way he mentioned my pill organizer, something I kept in my private bathroom, made my skin crawl. How long had he been monitoring the most intimate details of my daily routine? The tracking app, I said slowly. Marcus, what information does it give you? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Just basic location services. Where you go, how long you stay. Show me. I held out my hand for Detective Morrison's phone. I want to see exactly what you've been tracking. Detective Morrison handed me her phone, and with shaking fingers, I logged into my iCloud account to check my device settings. What I found made my blood run cold. There are 3 unknown devices linked to my Apple ID, I said, my voice barely audible. Marcus, you've been tracking my location in real time for months. The app showed a detailed history that made me nauseous. Every trip to David's apartment, every doctor's appointment, every grocery store visit, all logged with timestamps and duration. February 28th, Morrison Marketing, 8:47 a.m. to 5:23 p.m., I read aloud. March 3rd, Presbyterian Hospital, 2:15 to 4:30 p.m. I looked up at him with growing horror. You knew about every single doctor's appointment. Sarah, I was worried when you were at the hospital for over 2 hours. What if something was wrong with the baby? What if you needed someone? David grabbed the phone from my hands, scrolling through the location data. March 10th, he tracked you to my apartment and then. His face went pale. Sarah, he was parked outside my building for 6 hours that night. I wanted to make sure you got home safely. Marcus protested. Do you know how dangerous downtown parking can be for pregnant women after dark? Detective Morrison was taking notes rapidly. Mr. Rivera, following someone to multiple locations and surveilling their activities constitutes stalking under Colorado law. But look at March 15th. Marcus said desperately, twisting in his handcuffs. Sarah went to Walgreens at 11 p.m. Pregnant women shouldn't be out alone that late. I followed her to make sure she was safe. You followed her, Officer Martinez repeated slowly. You physically followed Ms. Chen to a pharmacy at 11 p.m. From a distance. She never saw me. And it's a good thing I was there because some creepy guy tried to talk to her in the parking lot. Katie's mouth fell open. Sarah, do you remember that night? You said some guy asked if you needed help with your car. My stomach lurched as the memory clicked into place. That was you. Marcus, you approached me in the Walgreens parking lot. I was protecting you. That other guy looked suspicious. What other guy? David demanded. Marcus fidgeted. There wasn't actually another guy. But there could have been. Sarah, you were buying pregnancy test strips at 11 p.m. That's exactly the kind of vulnerable situation predators look for. Emma looked confused. Wait, why were you buying pregnancy tests in March? You already knew you were pregnant. I wasn't buying pregnancy tests, I said slowly, the pieces clicking together. I was buying iron supplements because I felt dizzy that afternoon. Detective Morrison looked up sharply. Mr. Rivera, did you approach Ms. Chen under false pretenses? I just asked if she needed help. She looked tired, and pregnant women shouldn't be lifting heavy bags. Marcus, I interrupted, my voice hollow. I bought travel-size shampoo and iron pills. The bag weighed maybe 2 pounds. But you seemed unsteady. I was worried you might faint. David was scrolling through more location data, his expression getting darker. Sarah, according to this, he's been to your apartment complex 43 times since January. 43 times. I was never doing anything wrong. Marcus said quickly. Sometimes I just sat in the parking lot to make sure you got home from work okay. Or I'd check that your car started in the morning. You know how unreliable that Honda is in cold weather. My grandmother's voice cut through the room like a blade. Marcus, how exactly were you checking her car from a parking lot? The question hung in the air, and Marcus's face went red. I may have, occasionally, checked under the hood. Just to make sure everything looked normal. Officer Martinez stepped forward. Sir, are you saying you've been tampering with Ms. Chen's vehicle? Not tampering. Maintaining. Sarah, I changed your oil on February 12th because you were 300 miles overdue. I probably saved your engine. You changed my oil? I felt like I was going to throw up. Marcus, I took my car to Jiffy Lube that week because the oil light came on. They told me someone had recently changed it but used the wrong filter. The filter was fine. Those guys at Jiffy Lube just wanted to upsell you. Detective Morrison's pen was moving rapidly across her notepad. Mr. Rivera, unauthorized vehicle maintenance constitutes tampering with private property. Marcus was spiraling now, his voice getting higher and more desperate. Everything I did was for Sarah's safety. The oil change, the apartment checks, the location monitoring, I was being a responsible partner. We're not partners. I screamed, my composure finally shattering completely. We haven't been partners since December. You cheated on me. You threw me away. You don't get to pretend you're protecting me. I made one mistake. One mistake? Emma stood up from her chair, her face flushed with anger. Marcus, you've been stalking my sister for 4 months. You've stolen her identity, destroyed her credit, and turned her pregnancy into a charity scam. Detective Morrison's radio crackled again. Detective, we've got more from the storage unit. Looks like he's got a whole filing system here. Medical records, bank statements, employment information, everything going back to January. My legs gave out again, and David caught me as the full scope of Marcus's surveillance became clear. He hadn't just been watching me, he'd been building a complete dossier of my life, collecting every piece of personal information he could access. Marcus, Detective Morrison said quietly, exactly how much of MS Chen's personal information do you have in that storage unit? His answer came in a whisper that chilled me to the bone, everything. The word everything hung in the air like a death sentence. Detective Morrison closed her notebook with a sharp snap that seemed to echo through my living room. Mr. Rivera, she said, her voice carrying the weight of law enforcement authority, you're under arrest for stalking, identity theft, mail fraud, computer fraud, breaking and entering, and harassment. Given the scope of these crimes, I'm recommending you be held without bail pending federal charges. Federal? Marcus's voice cracked. Detective, please, I was just. You crossed state lines with the GoFundMe fraud, tampered with federal mail services, and committed banking crimes that fall under federal jurisdiction, she interrupted. This isn't a local matter anymore. Officer Martinez guided Marcus toward the door, but he twisted around one last time, his eyes wild with desperation. Sarah, please. Don't let them destroy my life over this. I love you. Everything I did was because I love you. I stood up slowly, my hands resting on my 7-month belly where my real future was growing, David's and mine. The baby kicked as if responding to the tension in the room, and I felt a surge of protective strength I'd never experienced before. Marcus, I said, my voice steady for the first time all evening, what you call love, the rest of the world calls stalking. What you call protection, everyone else calls control. You didn't lose me because of one mistake. You lost me because you never actually loved me, you loved owning me. That's not true. If you loved me, I continued, cutting him off, you would have wanted me to be happy, even if it wasn't with you. Instead, you spent 4 months trying to sabotage my life because you couldn't handle that I found someone who actually treats me well. David's arm tightened around my waist, and I leaned into his strength. Sarah, Marcus said desperately as Officer Martinez pulled him toward the door, when you realize how good we were together, when you remember all our plans. I remember everything, Marcus. Including the part where you cheated on me and told me I was a mistake. I looked around at my family and friends, all these people who had come to celebrate new life and instead witnessed the final death of my past. But that was the best thing you ever did for me, because it led me to David. Marcus's face crumpled. You'll regret this, Sarah. When that baby comes and things get hard, you'll remember how good I was to you. Marcus, my grandmother interrupted sharply from her corner chair. The only thing Sarah will remember is how peaceful her life became once you were gone. Detective Morrison stepped forward. Mr. Rivera, anything else you say can and will be used against you in court. I strongly advise you to remain silent. As they reached the front door, Marcus made one final, pathetic attempt. Sarah, I still have the ring. The engagement ring I bought in January. It's in the storage unit. I can give it to you right now if you just. Keep it, I said firmly. Sell it to pay back the people you defrauded. Maybe Grandma Betty from the GoFundMe can get her $25 back. The door closed behind them with a satisfying click, and suddenly my living room felt like it could breathe again. The baby shower gifts scattered around the coffee table looked bright and hopeful once more, symbols of the real future I was building. Katie immediately started pacing, her phone in her hand. Sarah, I'm taking down that Facebook post and calling everyone who donated to the GoFundMe. We're going to make sure every penny gets returned to the right people. The wedding venue, David said suddenly. We need to call Garden of the Gods and cancel whatever Marcus booked. Emma was already dialing. I'm calling Miguel to make sure they get everything from that storage unit. Sarah, you're going to need documentation of every single thing he stole for the federal case. My mother stood up and started collecting the scattered wrapping paper from my abandoned gifts. Well, she said with forced brightness, this certainly wasn't the baby shower I expected, but at least we know that baby is going to have parents who actually love each other. I laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in hours. Mom, that might be the understatement of the year. David pulled me close, his lips brushing against my temple. Sarah, I need you to know that none of this changes anything for me. Marcus's obsession, the fraud, the stalking, none of it makes me love you any less. Are you sure? I asked, suddenly vulnerable. David, he's made such a mess of everything. My credit, my job, my insurance. We'll fix it, he said firmly. All of it. Together. My grandmother cleared her throat. Sarah, dear, might I suggest we finish opening the baby gifts? That child is still coming in 2 months, and frankly, I think we could all use a reminder of what actually matters. So that's what we did. Surrounded by my family and friends, I opened tiny onesies and soft blankets, assembled a high chair, and marveled at the beautiful mobile that would hang over my daughter's crib. With each gift, Marcus's twisted fantasy faded a little more, replaced by the reality of people who loved me without conditions, without surveillance, without the need to control every aspect of my life. As the evening wound down and people started heading home, Detective Morrison called to update me. Marcus had confessed to everything, partly out of guilt, partly because the evidence against him was overwhelming. The federal prosecutor was confident about getting full restitution for all the fraud victims, and Marcus would likely spend the next several years in federal prison. One more thing, Ms. Chen, she said. We found 47 different institutions in that notebook where he'd used your identity. Our white-collar crime unit is going to help you contact every single one to restore your correct information. 47. The number that had seemed so terrifying a few hours ago now just felt like a to-do list. Tedious, frustrating, but manageable. After everyone left, David and I sat on my couch surrounded by baby gifts, his hand resting on my belly where our daughter was doing her nightly gymnastics routine. She's going to be born into a world where Marcus can't hurt us, I said softly. And where she'll know what healthy love looks like, David added. I thought about the past 4 months, the fear, the anxiety, the feeling that something was always slightly wrong. Now I knew why. Marcus hadn't been a ghost haunting my past, he'd been a very real presence infiltrating my present. But that was over now. David, I said, I have something to tell you. He tensed slightly. What? I love you. Really, truly love you. Not because you rescued me from Marcus's insanity, not because you're helping me clean up this mess, but because you make me feel like the person I was always supposed to be. He kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Outside, Colorado Springs sparkled in the darkness, full of possibilities that had nothing to do with surveillance or fraud or obsession. Tomorrow, I would start the long process of reclaiming my identity. But tonight, I was just Sarah Chen, 7 months pregnant, surrounded by baby gifts and genuinely loved by a man who had never once made me feel like I needed to be anything other than exactly who I was. And Marcus Rivera was finally, completely, out of my life. The baby kicked one more time, as if to say she approved of this new arrangement. I smiled and closed my eyes, listening to David's steady heartbeat and feeling, for the first time in 4 months, completely safe.